Welcome to Heroes First Podcast, sponsored by Fund the First, the nation's leading verified crowdfunding platform for first responders, military, and medical professionals. And now, your host, broadcasting from Long Island, New York, Robert Garland.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining this week's episode of Heroes First Podcast. Each week, you will hear from a new guest that portrays excellence in the first responder, military, or medical professional field. If you are an active or retired member of the service, or even a family member or a friend, then this show is for you. I would like to now present to you our guests for episode 6 of this podcast series, Blue Wealth PD. So Blue Wealth PD, we have Vince Schiavarelli, Bracken Fiore, and we also have Fund the First Zone, Michael Luna. Thanks, guys, for joining.
Thanks for having us, Rob.
Thank you.
So this is great what you guys are doing with Blue Wealth PD. You're doing basically it's a financial services for retirement. Is that right?
Oh. Yeah, it's a little bit of everything. It's really just provide an education, with regards to finances. So yeah, I guess, if you want to say the financial service aspect, yes, but it's more about being that, that person to reach out to when you have those important questions that the job doesn't necessarily offer to you. So pretty much in a nutshell.
So Bracken, you started this?
Yeah, actually, I've been in the financial service industry for 15 years now. So I like to say this all started back then. I finally put the brand probably about 3.5 years ago when we went full force with it. So, it's kind of blown up in a very short period of time. I definitely think the pandemic had a little bit to do with that. Unfortunately, a lot of guys are, pressed to get out. So kind of our demand has just propelled, as far as coming down and speaking at the precincts, the detective squad locations. I mean, it's just ever evolving, which has been awesome. So, we've been grateful to be able to provide that education to these guys.
That's excellent. That's excellent. So what's the number one type of advice you give to people for retirement, basically?
The first important thing is that I think that everyone needs to get educated. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what someone tells you to do with your money or how to invest your money. It's really about what's right for you and your family. Everybody has different goals, everybody has different aspirations, different dreams, and everybody's in a totally different financial category, right? Who has loans outstanding, who has, children with special needs, who has millions and millions of dollars that they're going to be inheriting from their parents at some point in time. So it's really hard to just get up there and give cookie cutter advice. So we really press guys to say, listen, it's not as complicated and as difficult as it seems looking in. Take the time, learn this stuff. Right. And that's something that we drive hard on is you got to prepare yourself and at least get somewhat of a grasp on these programs. So this way, at the end of the day, you feel comfortable protecting yourself and protecting your family.
That's great. So Vinny, where do you stand with the company as well? I'd love to hear your background story. I know you were a detective, you retired from the job, and I know we spoke about all of that.
I'm actually still active, Rob. I mean,
you're still active? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Why did I think you were retired?
Well, wishful thinking, I guess, on your behalf. I don't know.
You know what? There was something. Oh man, I'm getting people mixed up.
Something I don't. Is that what you're trying to tell me, or
maybe there was another Vinny I was talking to the other day. Maybe I got mixed up.
No
That's a good icebreaker, right? There we go.
Yeah, exactly. My story. So I'll go to the beginning of how I got on the job. I got on the job 2003, July 2003. Nobody in my family was a police officer, fireman, no first responder ever in my family. And when I graduated college, it was December of 2001. We all know what happened September 2001. I had actually dreams of being in finance, working in the financial field. I had interviews lined up, and obviously we all know what happened to that. 2003, I become a police officer, and I went into it with, listen, I have a 5-year plan. This isn't going to be my career path. I'm going to go back into finance. I'm going to get that job because I know that's what I really want to do. Let's fast forward to 2005. I guess as fate would have it, I was going into work that morning, June 2005, and I stopped the robbery. Basically, I was Dunkin' Donuts. Guy kid went to Dunkin' Donuts. He went to rob the place. He went to stab the clerk. I grabbed him. He stabbed me, and from there, very, very long story and a great story short, I was put into the warrant squad, where I've been since then. I've been in the warrant squad since 2005, so going over now 15 years. I was in Brooklyn South, and now I'm currently in Staten Island warrants, and it's been great to me. So how I got involved with Blue Wealth, being in warrants at such a young time, I was working with a lot of older detectives, and I noticed one thing, that they didn't have a plan after the job. They really didn't know what they wanted to do. They didn't have any of their ducks in a row. They were just kind of going off of, well, so-and-so told me, and this is what I really think, they really weren't getting proper education. And I saw the need for that. And I always said to myself, there really should be something for first responders, and especially, because I can relate to NYPD, some sort of education. With that, I always tried to learn as much as I could as I went on, preparing for, I call it the afterlife, after the job, right? So a couple of years back, my partner and I, we ran a golf outing. We were raising money for a local sports organization here. And we did a great job with that. And Bracken and Blue Wealth happened to be one of our sponsors for that event. And me having the vision of having an education platform for first responders, coincidentally, there was Bracken already with this already lined up. So he and I got talking, and obviously we hit it off, and that's my involvement now with Blue Wealth. I'm trying to help him build the brand. I'm advising anybody that I can get in front of, detectives, setting up the meetings, setting up the things, just trying to build it up so guys know that there are options, other than what the guy next to you has heard of, or what you may read somewhere on some vague website on the internet, or just, that conversation. And, Bracken and Blue Wealth has been a huge asset, to all of us so far. So long story short, basically.
Great story. And you bring up such a perfect note on that with after the job, right? It's, we become cops and we excel in our career, and we only think about our career, and that's it. We don't think about what's going to go on after retirement. We say, okay, after I retire, you know what I'll do? I'll become a director of security at some school, or I'll open up my own private investigating business. But now opening up a business, do you know how to do that? Do you know how to start start an LLC or a C Corp or an S Corp? Do you know how to raise capital? Do you know how to do all that? Get your insurances, and that's a problem. And that's a major problem on the job. There's no real education with that. And guys are always saying, oh, I have this idea, but they don't know what to do and where to go with it. We had that, and Fund the First, and thankfully with Michael, I was able to, him and I played baseball back in college together, and we were always kept in touch, and he's a CPA. So we were able to draft this business idea with Fund the First. Right. And it's incredible what you're doing, Vin and Bracken, to be able to educate, especially our law enforcement right now, to let them know that there is life after the job. There's different things you can do. And it's great, because we live in a bubble. Yeah. It's unfortunate. We live in a bubble.
Rob, it's so funny that you brought that point up, because I was going to say exactly that. It makes the transition to retirement that much easier for our first responders that are out there, because their careers are short. It's 25, 30 years, and you're out, and then you have a whole life ahead of you. But do you do nothing? I mean, you kind of you get pretty bored doing nothing. So we have a lot of clients who get ready for retirement planning, and they don't know what to do with their lives. They should have started their ideas 10 years ago, 15 years ago, while they were still working and doing this on the weekends and their off-duty hours, building something up, and then having that as another asset for them in retirement.
Right. And that's yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah. I was just going to say, so, part of the dynamic of, this network that we've created with Blue Wealth is that we have all different professionals in different industries and sectors, like CPAs and attorneys and things of that nature. So, when I sit down with someone and they're telling me, listen, I plan on retiring in 4 years, or some guys will say, listen, I'm putting my papers in tomorrow, some people wait, some people are excited to get it done. But the first question that we ask is always, listen, what's your plan, right? What's your plan for what your next chapter is going to look like? All right. Now, a lot of guys will say, listen, I maxed out my deferred comp. I maxed out my ITHP. You know, I've been putting money away here, here, and here, but now what? Right. So, you know, where the dynamic comes in is when someone says to us, listen, I've thought about opening up a business, or I've thought about, you know, investing in real estate. You know, we have partners within our organization that we can put them in touch with. Right. And they're all, you know, police friendly, where they've either been on the job previously, or, you know, they have some type of ties to the job. And, you know, it's really becoming more of like a family, you know, in essence. And it, you know, trust is everything. So, and even if I send them to somebody to give them advice about a divorce, for example, right? We see that very often on the job, unfortunately, but you need to have some coaching on how to handle this stuff, you know, and that's the proactive part of, you know, building that circle of trust and having those different resources a phone call away.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. You know, when somebody knows that they can go to somebody else who understands them and understands their background, it just makes them feel so much more comfortable to work with that person, especially when it comes to financial related transactions and questions, because
yes,
that's a touchy subject. People have a difficult time, you know, giving their financial background and history to somebody else. It's very difficult, and we find that a lot. But after, you know, breaking the ice and warming up and, you know, getting to know each other, and, oh, you have a similar background to me, it becomes an easier conversation.
Right.
I agree.
And I mean, Rob, I'm sure you could attest to this. Like it's talking financials amongst each other. It's almost like taboo. Like I know what you make as a detective. I know what the overtime is, and everybody's chasing the dollar. Everybody's chasing the overtime, and it's always like, and I know when it comes up to retirement, a lot of guys are like, well, if I hit this number, then I'll be okay. And it's just some arbitrary number that they just think is what they're supposed to have, not knowing that there are so many options other than what is on that little piece of paper that we get, other than the overtime. And, you know, like when I sat down with Bracken, it's not like this cookie cutter thing where he's going to say, okay, you have a pension, you have a deferred comp, you have X, Y, and Z, and this is all you can do. Like it's a personalized plan specifically for me and my needs, and everyone gets that attention. And that's what I really like. Like I just didn't get into it. Like I wanted to vet everyone. I need to know everything before I go into it. I'm a detective, right? So I need to know who I'm talking to, what their intentions are. Do they have my intentions in their best interest? So when I sat down with Bracken and his team, it was, 3 hours of in-depth, this is what you need, this is what you can. And it wasn't like, okay, go ahead and do this. Bracken literally said to me, he goes, take this information that I'm giving you, take it somewhere else and see what they say. So the education part is what I really respected and what I think guys need more than anything, especially now in this climate, right? So, it's a volatile air, times are tough.
Man, we don't know if we're going to have our jobs tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly.
Think about it. Something could happen where when we came on the job, let's say 10 years ago, right, that you did, that was fine. But now today, if you do that same exact thing, you're getting fired.
Yeah.
So you don't know if you're going to have your job. There's no job security really anymore, especially for law enforcement officers. And it's a tough climate.
And guys feel like, oh, I'm not there yet. Like, I don't need to worry about this. Like, my biggest regret is that I didn't do it sooner,
mm-hmm.
That I didn't get into this sooner, because I would have been in a better position. Not that I'm in an awful position, but you always think you could do more. So, I have great intentions, and especially now that I'm, advocating for Blue Wealth and getting the education part out there, I think this is something that I'm passionate about, that guys really need to know. You have options and you have an opportunity to make your life better and your family's life better. And enjoy retirement. Our biggest thing is that we don't get to enjoy the afterlife, which is what I affectionately call it. Like, guys retire and it's almost like Mike was saying, well, now what do I do?
Well, not only that, some of these guys are coming off the job and within 12 to 18 months, it's over.
Yeah. And that's what I mean. Because we're not, we're our own worst enemy, right? We don't take care of our own health financially or physically. And we beat ourselves up, and it's a selfless job. And if you don't take care of yourself, no one's going to do that for you. Like you were saying, you're doing the right thing on the job or just out in the street, and you're being a good person. You're doing what you're that first responder. You're that hero that, you're supposed to be. And it could be misconstrued. Take the time now to get yourself in order in the event that something catastrophic like that happens. And if it doesn't, great, you're still above, you're still ahead of the game, and I have peace of mind now knowing that I sat down and did this, that my family's good, and that I'm just going to keep getting better and growing and enjoying my time when that time comes. And I can go out on my own terms. I'm not chasing that number, that magic number that everybody seems to be doing. So
Bracken or Vin, whichever one of you wants to take this, for our listeners that are new to, the first responder field, what are some of the critical financial planning tips you would give them for somebody that's new, that's coming onto the job and needs to set themselves up? We were just talking about setting themselves up the right way. What's your best advice for them?
Yeah. So, in the beginning, what we see, a lot of, rookies that just come onto the job, what they tend to do is that they tend to make their deferred comp their main source of savings. Okay. So what I mean by that is that they'll, bump up as much as they can afford to juice up these pre-tax programs. And what tends to happen is as they, go through life and life starts to happen, right? You get on the job, maybe you're single at the time, and then eventually you get married, maybe you start having babies, and, maybe you want to buy a house, or you want to do this, or you want to do that. They tend to take out a lot of loans, right? They take loans against these programs, and only because they don't have another reserve, right? They didn't create another bucket that's not tied to the pension system and not tied to any pre-tax requirements. Now, what a lot of guys don't know also is that you're putting the money in pre-tax, right? It comes out of your check. When you borrow the money, you're actually paying it back with after-tax dollars. All right. Now, when you pay it back with after-tax dollars, eventually when you do retire, guess what? You're paying tax again when you take that distribution from the deferred comp. So now you're paying tax 2 times on the same dollar, right? So, Mike, being a CPA, you never want to tell your client, wow, you got to pay tax twice, right? Some other things very important to think about for new people coming on is to make sure you understand how to manage your money within those pre-tax programs, right? So the 457, the 401k, you have to learn how these portfolios work. So you have the equity index fund, you have the small cap funds, you have mid cap funds, international and stable. So the idea is that you have to learn how to play the peaks and valleys. So if the market's up 20, 30%, if you just leave it there, like most guys do, eventually the market goes down on a decline. Guess what? You lost all your gains, and something that, is very fresh was during the pandemic. If guys looked at their statement in January and then you compare it to what it was January of 2021, a lot of them are lucky if they're even money, right? Those are the guys that left the money where it was. Now, a lot of our clients took our advice towards the year end when we did our annual reviews, and we said, listen, market's up 20, 30%. Let's, you're going into your final year. Let's reposition a portion of the portfolio. If the market takes a little bit of a dip, we'll re-enter, and let's capitalize on the dips of the market. So we had some clients actually doubled their money this year, while everybody else was even money on just, something as minor as, playing the game. And that's really all it is. But I think everybody on the job, especially tier 3, you're very dependent on your deferred comp, right? You don't have the ITHP and the 50%. So your retirement is going to greatly be dependent upon how well you manage this portfolio, right? So, again, that's just the emphasis now. And also life insurance. right? What a lot of guys don't know is that if, God forbid, you happen to pass away off duty, less than 20 years, your pension's not vested, right? So it's usually going to be about 3 times your salary and maybe 3 times your salary through the union if you're off duty. All right. Now, with what you guys are doing, it's great work that you guys are doing. And, just to give you a prime example, the people that you're helping raise money for, they didn't know that they were going to be in these situations, that they were going to need money to be raised for them to help them through a surgery or, an unexpected illness. So, that's where we want to be that proactive voice to say, listen, guys, things happen. You guys see it on a daily basis, right? The person that got hit by a car yesterday, or, your friend that just had a minor heart attack. These things happen all around us. Nobody knows, like, they wake up one day and say, you know what, tomorrow I'm going to die. I might want to get all my stuff in order. Like, it doesn't work that way.
No, not at all.
And everybody thinks they're superheroes, right? We all think we're going to live to 100 and, we're all going to be as good looking as you guys are now. But, we got to plan for the worst, right? Because as long as you're comfortable with the worst case scenario, everything else is just positivity, right? So that's why I think everybody should take 10 to 15 minutes to at least give themselves a little checkup, from a financial standpoint and also from a mental wellness standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you bring up a great point with the life insurance, because I think a lot of people don't even have the coverage that they should have, or they get it at the wrong time in their life, that it may not make sense to go into a specific like whole life policy that costs them $1,000 a month. There are times where you should have life insurance and times you shouldn't. When you have a family, when you have a house, when you have a mortgage to pay, if you go down and you can't, you're not, you're no longer around to support your family, they're going to struggle. They're going to have a hard time filling that void. So having something in place at that point is super critical. And I think people, don't realize that you can get something in place with a term policy for 20 to 30 years that could be fairly inexpensive, $60 a month, and they could have a $1.5 million policy if they pass away. Now, all these things are depending on age and their health, but I think that's a simple way to at least get some sort of coverage to protect your family.
Yeah. And listen, I'd say, I think most guys on the job just have faith that the job is going to take care of their family. Right. And that's not necessarily true if you're less than 20 years. I definitely agree with you as far as the importance of life insurance. I think at different stages of everybody's life, there's a different need for it, right? When you have dependents, right, there's the need to replace your income. I think towards the back end of your life, it becomes more of a legacy, right? If you live to your 70s and 80s, it's totally up to you if you want to leave some money, but it's the dependency in the beginning that's most important. And Rob, I'm going to pick on you right now, but so you're on the job, right? So what I want you to think about is when you retire, right? So when you get your paperwork in front of you and you look at your pension options, right? So for argument's sake, right? What age are you going to be when you retire?
I'll be 42.
Okay. So you're going to retire at 42, right? Now, let's just say, for argument's sake, just to keep round numbers, let's say your pension after tax is $100,000 a year, right? Now, how old do you plan on living for?
100 years old, like you said.
Okay. So for this exercise, we're going to say 30 years, right? I want to get you to 80 and 90, but just for this exercise, we're going to give you 30 years, right? So from 42 to 72 at $100,000 a year, that's 30 years of potential earned income, right? Mm-hmm. But what's the catch with the city pension?
The taxes.
Not the taxes, but you have to be alive to cash the check.
Oh, that's it. Right?
So you have to be physically alive to get that check for that $3 million, right? Because we said $100,000 after tax over a 30-year period, that's potential earned income that in essence, we need to secure, right? So Mike, that's where the insurance would come in to say, listen, you're insuring a pension. We're not insuring Rob's life anymore. We're insuring this $3 million that's owed to the Garland family, right? Rob, you have any kids?
3, yep.
All right. So that $3 million that's owed to you, do you care if it comes from an insurance company or if it comes from the NYPD?
No, as long as my family gets it, that's the most important part.
So that's the reality of the types of conversations that we have is all the sacrifice that you gave to the job. You, most of the time, what got you through it was you told yourself, I got to do 20 years and I'm going to have a pension. Right. The times you didn't want to run, answer that 911 call, or the times you wanted to go to your son's baseball game or your daughter's ballet class, and all those things that you had to give up that you would have loved to have been there. It's all because you wanted to have this sense of security that your pension is going to be coming in to take care of your family. Now, there's only two options with the city pension. It's either the gamble option, which is on your lifetime, or the spousal option. Now, the spousal option, there's some handcuffs on that, right? It's about 10 to 15% discount off of your max option, right? So what I mean by that is, let's say your pension's $100,000. If you do the spouse option, you're probably looking at about $90,000 a year, right? So there's a cost involved. Now, if God forbid something happens to your spouse before you, the city is still taking that deduction out of your pocket, right? And you cannot put your kids on as a beneficiary. So if you live another 30 years and you're giving up $10,000, that's $300,000 that's lost in the wind.
Wow.
All right. So the way that we build our portfolios is that we actually tier the insurance, where when you turn 42, what we'd be able to do is that if we decide that you want to protect 30 years of your pension, then we would start out with $3 million. And then every 10 years, your policy would reduce by $1 million, right? Because if you live for 10, that means you had 10 years of earnings of your pension. You don't need to pay for that extra $1 million of coverage. So if you pass away in year 10, your family's getting another 20 years of your pension tax-free. Right. And if something happens to your wife, you leave it to the kids. Right. So it just gives you a lot of flexibility that the current pension system doesn't. Right. Because we all know life happens. And when unexpected things happen, you need options.
And, tying this into the job, Rob, I mean, when you go and you sign up and you sign paperwork, there's literally no one who's going to tell you that. It's going to take it. How long did it take Brackman? It took him 5 minutes. And it's one scenario. We all have different scenarios, but it's basically sign here, check here. And you're only doing what the guy next to you in the auditorium is basically doing because he heard it from so-and-so. And that may not be the wrong information, but it's not the information for you and what your projected, what your life is going to be 30, 40, 50 years from now. That's why I'm so passionate about getting this out to the guys. You don't have to do all these things, but you need to know that you have options when it comes to that. So
I actually we got our life insurance right, like maybe 2 weeks before the pandemic.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I don't even know if we would have been able to get the same pricing or anything that we got. It was pretty incredible. My wife happens to be a cop also. So
the insurance companies, they didn't change their premiums because of the pandemic. Something that is in the works though, and I didn't mention this, but I'm a managing partner of a Fortune 100 company. And so I have direct contact with a lot of underwriters with all these different companies that we're licensed with. And we had a year-end recap. And a lot of these, CEOs of these organizations were addressing future underwriting questions, right? So the underwriting part is the health questions, right? So, whether you have to do a blood and a urine sample, during COVID, there was actually no physical labs being done, but we were ordering records directly from the doctors. As of right now, with regards to COVID, the way it's being addressed is that You do not need a vaccine to get life insurance as of now, right?
Keep
they
it that
kind
way.
of put a question mark.
It needs to stay that way.
Oh, right. It should. The second thing is that there's no questions being put onto the applications yet if you had COVID. Now, if any of you have applied for life insurance, you know that there was a lot of questions about different illnesses. Were you ever diagnosed with this? Were you ever diagnosed with this and that and this and that? So eventually, COVID will be added on there. I think if you've been hospitalized for COVID, I think you need to get your life insurance in place now because it has not been addressed on the applications yet. That may have an effect on your rating class. All right. So I'm just giving you some advanced knowledge that it's just a matter of time before the question starts to get asked. Were you diagnosed with COVID? Were you hospitalized? Now, if that's the answer, yes and yes, you might not get an ultra rating anymore. You may get an automatic standard rating because we don't know the long-term effects of COVID, right? Wow. God willing, we all rebalance from it. But as an advisor, these are the things that I have to get out there and explain to people so it doesn't just hit them all of a sudden and say, how come nobody told me that? Like, wow, I should have did this last month as opposed to this month, right? So this whole pandemic has really created a sense of urgency for a lot of people to really at least get an idea what they have, right? And the biggest question that I always like to ask when people say that they have things in place, right? So like Rob, you just said you took out a policy right before the pandemic. What I would ask you as an advisor is, listen, tell me about how you determined the amount of insurance that you put in place, for how long and why. Right. We all have a why on why we do the things that we do. And that's our driver, right? Why you guys started Fund the First, why we started Blue Wealth. But why did you take out $1 million of insurance? What is that going to do? Right. So we just put the numbers to paper. And if you came to me and you said, listen, I have a 20-year term policy for $1 million. What I'm going to say is, let's take a timeout. God forbid something happened to you yesterday. Let's look at all the income sources that are going to come to a stop. And then let's see what this $1 million is going to replace and for how long. And really see what those dollars are going to actually do for your family in the event you're not here. Right? Because you hear the number 1 million and you think it's a lot, but if you do the math on your income, and you take a look at what your expenses are, and now you think, wait a minute, my income's not coming in anymore. I need to be able to leave, 10 times my income or 20 times my income, whatever it may be. That's where the confidence comes in, right? And that's what you owe to yourself. You owe it to your kids. You owe it to your family and your future grandkids at some point in time, that may be able to benefit by the planning that you did.
That is great advice, Bracken. And, such a critical, detailed analysis of how to think about planning for that life insurance policy that you're going to go out and get. Because I think often too many times people don't even think about the right reasons why they're getting it and how to look at it analytically as you broke it down. So thank you for that.
Yep. And now, Mike, you're not on the job, right?
No, I'm a partner in a CPA firm, and the
okay.
CFO for Fund the First.
So you and I have a similar story, right? We have a passion for, a respect for guys like Vinny and Rob that are on the job, and we're using our skill sets to add value and to bring that expertise to the forefront. Now, so for guys like me and you, we don't have a pension. Right. We don't have a pension system. We don't have deferred comps. We don't have the ITHP and, all that good stuff. So, we need to basically self-fund our programs. Mm-hmm. Right. So something that, I tell you as a CPA, that's overlooked a lot of times is income protection. So guys on the job, like Vin and Rob, they have, what's 3/4. Right. So 3/4 is a disability policy. You go out on disability and you get 3/4 of your salary, tax free. That's awesome. Right. But for guys like me and Mike, if God forbid something happens to us and, we suffer some type of an injury, It could be mental, it could be physical. Who's paying our bills, right? So we do have income protection programs for professionals, right? Like you and I, that can replace 60% of our income. So it's not just the planning for the member of service, but there's also spouses that work, right? There's also spouses that may be a homemaker, right? Or spouses that are other professionals that have their own business, their own, practice, right? Or their own entrepreneurial aspirations. Now, I think one thing that's extremely overlooked is having life insurance on the spouse, right? So one thing I always get, right? I have 3 kids at home. My wife doesn't work, so I don't really need insurance on her. Now that's where I take the step back and I say, Vin, let me ask you a question, Vin. If God forbid something happened to your wife, are you going to be able to put in the overtime that you're used to putting in?
Absolutely
Do you
not.
think that you might, do you think that you may want to spend some more time with your kids if your wife's not in the picture, God forbid? Do you know how much daycare costs? Do you know how much after school costs? Do you know how much a nanny costs? So there's a lot of things that you got to understand, even though she's not bringing in an income or he's bringing in an income, there's still a financial responsibility there, right? So, to do a $1 million term policy for 10 years or 20 years until your youngest child is 18 or at least able to care for themselves, it might only cost you $20, $30 a month, but it's because no one put it into context of saying there's no income, I don't need to insure her, but there is a cost factor involved there. So I've personally, delivered over $11 million in life insurance claims in 15 years. So being, similar to what you guys are doing, being able to hand that check over to someone whose life just got turned upside down, there's no greater feeling than that. And that's a big reason why we do what we do, is because people kind of don't like to have these conversations, but it's the most important conversation to have, so that's why we look forward to partnering with you guys and, continuing to change people's lives, because that's what it's all about, so thank you for what you guys do.
No, thank you. Thank you. I mean, this is incredible advice. I'm sure our listeners are definitely going to want to hear more and connect with you. And this has been great. I mean, it's definitely knowledgeable to myself, some things that I haven't known, which is good. I'm sure we'll sit down and speak some more. But before we run out of time, actually, Vinny, I got to ask you one question.
Sure.
Being in warrants, and obviously let's be a little PC, be careful what you say.
Sure.
being in warrants, do you like grabbing warrants for narcotics guys more or for squad guys more?
If we could find the narcotics guys, then I wouldn't mind doing that. But definitely the squad guys, they're more appreciative. But nothing. I know you're a former narco guy, so that's why the question. You're all very hard workers. Let's put it that way. But no, definitely the squad guys. We all work very very well together, because and to title it, it's all, if it's, I guess this is PC. It's all, if I don't get your body, then I don't eat, and neither do you. It's not good for your family either. But no, definitely squad guys. No offense, Rob.
Well, I'm in the squad now, so
Yeah, I know. You guys keep it. You guys keep a tight group. So,
but I'm still narco. I got my tattoos, my beard. It's not going away.
The narco ranger. I understand. Yeah.
So there's 2 questions. Vinny and Bracken, I'll ask both of you. So Bracken, I'll ask you first. Since you didn't go the first responder route and you went into finances and all that stuff, which is excellent, would you do your career over again, or would you take a different path?
To be honest with you, I wouldn't change it for the world, because of the amount of lives that I've impacted. Those are people that wouldn't have been approached, because I took the initiative on 99% of those relationships, where, I reached out to the families and I said, listen, I love you. I care about you. I want to make sure you guys are taken care of. Let's make sure you get this in place. So let's make sure we, put your retirement plans in place before the stock market turns around. So, when I literally started this right out of college, if I wasn't in this industry, I would have joined the NYPD. So it kind of went, tenfold. And I always wanted to, give back some way, somehow. And this is the best way that I could do that. And I'm able now to change more people's lives by having, guys like you have us on these podcasts and, going to speak to different commands around the city. And I'm going next week to speak at 1PP again. So we're expecting another 100, members of service there. So I am able to touch people's lives in some way, somehow. And for that, I could never, never change that.
Awesome. And Vinny, what about you?
To be honest, I don't like to think like that. What would you like to be when you grow up kind of deal? Because I'm already grown up, right? So depending if you ask my wife, not necessarily, but, since I can't go back, the only thing I would have done different was I would have started sooner. I would have taken my passion back then before I got on the job for finances, for helping people, and just done it sooner. I would have, actually pulled the trigger and said, this is something that needs to be, I should learn more. I should help more. Not that it's too late. Obviously I'm here now with you guys today, and I just would have done it a lot sooner because I think I would have been more impactful. So would I have changed it knowing what I know now? I don't think so. I really don't. I think I just would have been more effective sooner. What about you, Rob? Actually, what do you want to be when you grow up?
When I grow up, oh man, an astronaut. I always wanted to be. Honestly, that was actually when I was a kid. My parents were like, "What do you want to do?" And I was like, "I want to be an astronomer." But that will bring me down a wormhole right now, so I'm not even going to get into that.
That's for another podcast. That's part two. I think go down that same hole, actually.
Yeah, that's what Joe Rogan. We got to get Joe Rogan on that show. But yeah, I mean, if I could do it all again, I would, because the family I have right now, my wife and kids, I mean, I would never replace that for the world. So I know, if you think about the butterfly effect, if you change something back in time, maybe your life wouldn't be the same that it is today. So I wouldn't change anything for the world. But again, like you said, definitely educating myself earlier and starting earlier with different decisions. Absolutely. Definitely. Absolutely.
That's the biggest thing in this whole grand scheme of things is just educating and learning earlier in life and not saying that I'm going to push things off till later. Take initiative now, educate yourself, read books, listen to people, follow people that you admire, and educate, because that's what will help you be successful later on in life.
So true.
I tell you,
I'll give you one thing off of that. I just want to, give you something that I've, learned to live by is who we are today is from all the mistakes that we made in the past. Right. And that's part of, like, you had, we had spoken about in the template, we previously were going to touch on, like, the obstacle part. Right. I think we could all say that we learn more from obstacles than we learn from the good times. Right. It's those, the pain points where it's like, I know never to do that again. Or, you know what, I should have done this. And next time that question comes around, or next time, that presents itself, I know from experience that I'm going to make the right choice this time. And I think at all of our points in life now, we earned our way here. We're all continuing to grow. And, with Mike and Rob, if you guys tried starting this company from the first 10 years ago, you may not be as successful as you are today because of your experiences and because of the things that and, I don't want to steal Vin's line, but, know what you don't know and, be respective of that, and continue to, like Mike said, read books and continue to take in as much knowledge as possible. And the biggest, I think the thing that separates us from a lot of other people in the world is our ability to translate that into something that's understandable, right? Because not everybody could read books, right? And not everybody has that mindset of, let me be a sponge and take it in. A lot of guys are like, yo, just tell me how it is, make it in one sentence and point me in the right direction. I'll run through the wall, So that's why you got to have a team, right? That team dynamic is what makes the world go around. So pretty much, yeah.
No, that was great. I mean, in order to succeed, you have to fail. You have to. You won't know what your mistakes are. You won't know where to change, with your directions. And I would bet that not one successful person on this planet has not failed before. They've all failed. They've all been there. You have to fail. And that's the thing that, I mean, let's go back. If we loop back to our first responders, military, medical professionals, because of the career that they're in, they're afraid of failure. So they're afraid to step outside of their comfort zone, start a business or whatever it may be, and then fail and not know how to get back up on their feet afterwards. And that's something you guys give perfect advice for it. So, I think everyone should definitely hear your words of wisdom and speak with you guys more, because this is important. People need to understand that there is life after the job. There's different avenues that you could be taking, and don't be afraid of failure. Can't be afraid of it. I cannot be afraid of it.
Yep.
Absolutely. So there's two more questions. So actually it's one more question, but it's directed at the both of you again, because of it's called Heroes First Podcast. I like to ask a specific directed question. So Vinny, I'll start with you. What does a hero mean to you?
A hero to me is someone who acts selflessly for someone else. They don't think about the consequences for themselves. They don't think about what could happen to them. They think about, how can I help that person? How can I benefit that person? And they just go in and they take care of what they need to take care of. And if that person can help themselves, a hero steps up for them. That's how I feel a hero should be. It could be in law enforcement, military. It could be anybody who does it for the right reasons.
Perfect. Bracken?
Yeah, so, the word hero dates back to Greece. So, the definition of hero in its original terminology was defender and protector, right? So, to me, the word hero is synonymous with the word sacrifice, because I've never seen someone be appointed a hero without them having to save somebody, right? You're my hero because you saved my life. You're my hero because you gave me great advice, right? So it's not you're my hero because I see you doing great things for yourself all the time, right? So it definitely reminisces with someone that puts their own life on the line, their own well-being physically and mentally, to defend and protect someone that should be behind them, right? So
I love that.
I did have a good line for you guys, and I need your opinion because I think this is a pretty good line. Not all heroes wear capes, but most wear shields.
Love it.
Right? So I thought that was a pretty cool line for us.
Love it. So this has been great, guys. So thank you all for listening to episode 6 of Heroes First Podcast with our guests from Blue Wealth PD, Vinny Schiavarelli and Bracken Fiore, and special guest from Fund the First, Michael LaLuna. We'll see you all next time. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Heroes First Podcast with Robert Garland. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from the show. Make sure to like, rate, share, and review. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, make sure to visit fundthefirst.com and follow us on social media at fundthefirst. See you next time.